Tonight's going to work out. You know, it's going to have a safe landing. It's going to be okay. It looks like a lot of fun to me. And then, yeah, your little pocket's nothing. There's just a space to stop and smell the flowers. None of us knew this local food wave was coming. Josh told me. We weren't geniuses who could foretell the future. We were just at the right place at the right time. They started this about 15 years ago. None of this existed 15 years ago. One piece at a time, people organically adding to it. But what we were doing was the local instantiation, not a national trend, which makes people feel like they're kind of with it. They don't say, oh, that could happen in California. It could never happen here. They read about it and they're like, oh yeah, we've got that too. We've got that too. My highest goal in writing this book was to make it possible for every American who wants to say that. If you're here today, it's probable that you're among the millions of us out there, proving that growing food, which if you think about it is the most ancient of occupations, can address the most modern social problems, from poverty and addiction to the sense of disconnection that is so destructive a part of contemporary life. And it's making you and your neighbors, like me and mine, happier, healthier, wealthier, and a lot better fed. Good food, a good life, and the community of a garden city is available to all. Thank you so much.
What's the total population of people being fed collectively in the environment you're working in now, and how many years did it take to get to that point?
Total number of people fed is large. It's large, but it's hard to know with what frequency they're being fed this way. So for example, there's 12,000 clients of the food bank. There's 200 people having dinner tonight at that soup kitchen. There's these 2,500 kids who are visiting, you know, and participating in that program and having some of that food. There's the, you know, probably, you know, a few hundred CSA subscribers, households subscribing. CSA is usually enough to feed a family of 4. There's people who now live in these housing, which is built around these foods. So I would say it's not a situation where you have, you know, half the population eating 100% local food, but it's a situation where at least 100% of the population has the ability to have local food, you know, potentially as often as half the time, if that kind of makes sense. The idea is to, you know, give people entrees to it. And again, these are community farms and gardens. They're actually a fraction of the local food scene. But these are about, you know, the examples I chose to highlight tonight were those new faces of local food. So the farmer, I mean, there are 4 farmers markets in Missoula now. I'm in a summer CSA, a winter CSA, and a grain CSA. So, you know, you can buy half a lamb. You know, people have backyard chickens. I think we have backyard, what's the thing that's the controversial thing now in Boulder? Backyard goats. Love it. All right. And so that's some answers, even if not a definitive one. Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering where a lot of this was born out of, and part of that question is if all of these different community programs that you talked about in the last half, if these are all people who approached one entity, if it was this college group that kind of got
Sure.
going.
So in this case, they're all under an umbrella organization called Garden City Harvest, which partners with other nonprofit organizations. They're not the soup kitchen, they're not the food bank, they're not the youth program therapy or whatever. Now, how Garden City Harvest started, what I love, again, it's not about, I think people have a fear that like, oh, I can't do everything, I can't do this, I have to live my life. And what I love about all these stories is people got into it by just being themselves. Started with that guy, Josh Slotnick, I was quoting at the end. He was an organic farmer, market greens basically, and he wanted to teach people how to grow their own food. He wanted to start a student farm. And he was talking about it, and someone was like, well, where's the food going to go? And he was like, that never occurred to me. Someone said, well, we can probably help you get this land if it goes to feed the food bank. So then you had the students, and then a student who had gone through that farm had the idea for the farm work therapy program, and wonderfully they were open to the idea. They said, you know, try it. That's the great thing about student farm. People try things. It's not like the most productive. I mean, it has production obligations, but there's space to kind of screw around and see what you can try. Dry land farming, grapes, you know, goats, whatever. And he said, sure, try the therapy thing. It worked. That grew, and that grew out of the youth harvest, grew that mobile market. Out of that mobile, someone who had gone a therapist for that, and then started with the youth farm thing. The community gardens were an aspect of it the whole time. Another farm, which once they had that volunteer for veggies, and that's now at a few different of these other places, and that then allowed them to grow to the point where they could do do this soup kitchen. The field trips, I told that story, I don't know if you were here for that, but about how you got that education program involved. And you'll see again and again in the book, what I love is people were just like, you know, they got into it by accident or to their own surprise, and they found their life changed and that they were changing other people's lives too. And each new person, that's what's wonderful. Do it in your own way, in your own place, and you can be the national leader and give someone else ideas to steal too, which is cool.
I guess I only have one other little question, and that is maybe for other people in the audience, and that is if there's anybody in our community that you named a few at the end, all of which I'm very happy to be a part of, but I'm wondering if there's another something that I don't know about of people who are doing this already, as far as being that kind of umbrella or who want to be in charge of such a thing.
It's tricky. You know, it's really rare that organizations grow in a sort of organism actual way. It's very it's just hard. It's just hard to be like, okay, do what you want on our space and we'll make it figure out and you can run it and we'll partner. But I think we have to be open to that for this movement to coalesce in some ways. And you don't need to have this model. It's, you know, I've been to 20 different places and there's 20 different ways to put it together. You know, if there's problems, if there's things that, what are the advantages of the umbrella? Once you can offer those, once you can articulate those, I think then people can step in and say, oh, I hate gardening, but I love organizing, and I like eating. Maybe I'll be the one who does that all day. I'm sorry, what was your two-part question?
Have you participated, this question is around year-round gardening, and I assume that might, in your environment, be a greenhouse, have to be a greenhouse, or some size of a greenhouse. Have you participated in any conversation in the community about what the threshold of that is, what their feelings about that are, what they would like to do if they could? Is it economic or is it situational? Where have you gone in your community dialogue with that?
Yeah. And that's a larger question beyond community farms and gardens. There's a community food and agriculture coalition, which is trying to assess like farmland and capacity and things like that. And I think Boulder is farther along. I think that was basically one of your first, you had more intention in this movement when you kind of started a lot of these things. And I think you're further along as a result with assessment. It wasn't sort of one little pocket at a time growing. And so I think we're getting around to assessment. I think that might have been something that, at least from my early conversations with Lynette Marie, started out at. So there's that. So we're getting to that. I don't know, but it's something in progress. And year-round, it's not a lot going on there. There's some hydroponic producers, greenhouse stuff. Doesn't taste nearly as good to me, but that could just be. I'm going to a bunch of stuff like that tomorrow in Denver, so I'm looking forward to that taste test. And I'm sorry, did you have an answer to another question or a question? Oh, I'm sorry.
So Myrna and I met each other at Economics of Happiness, and were really inspired. And I mentioned that there's an empty plot in my neighborhood that the city owns. It's on 13th Street. It's a great location. I talked to you about it. And so we've started to pursue that. Just scratched the surface, really. So if anybody wants to talk to us about that, we would love that. And Is Growing Gardens an umbrella organization? I guess that was my question.
No, they don't operate quite like that. They have community gardens that they do run.
I've sort of connected with the city already, but we have messages going back and forth. But one of the messages I got was that they use Growing Gardens to do that kind of thing. So, so it was a message, so I don't know yet. But
And it's amazing in the local food movement. This is what's wonderful and terrifying is you can really have a lot going on in your own community that you're not aware of, or what people do, because it is so local. It's so like this neighborhood even. I mean, there's lots of people in Missoula this is news to, and there's lots of people it's not. You know, once you get into it, you get more. Often people get more and more into it. They just enjoy it, and they get kind of the taste for it. And someone in Atlanta, she told me, she said, we call it going down the rabbit hole. They go down the rabbit hole. They just get more and more into it. But you kind of need that first encounter, or that introduction, or that way in. And you know, one reason to write the book was just to show a bunch of different ways in, and also just show it's not just you must do this or it's obvious to people. You know, people are surprised to find where their journey is. And I like that about it. The idea is in each one of the, I think I, you know, kind of go into about 15 or more of these stories in depth and then have how it works sections for each one. And you know, the idea is in at least one of those faces, you can find yourself in your story, or your neighbor's story, or your family member's story. There's someone who's got a situation similar to you. See how they played it out. If they're the foodie, or they're the family, or they're the first grader, or they're the teen, or they're the student, or they're the teacher, or they're the senior, whatever.